The year is 2035 and the world is on the brink of collapse. The planet is scarred by conflict and torn apart by psychological warfare. At least that's how the official description of the next Black Ops put it. But something feels off. It makes reference to Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 2. Two games separated not just by years, but by sheer narrative insanity. And yet somehow, they connect. And that's the paradox of the Black Ops saga. A story so tangled in conspiracy, espionage, and hallucination that even the people who made this game probably need a corkboard and red string to keep up. But beneath the chaos, beneath the brainwashing, betrayals, and explosions, there is a strange coherence, a timeline that holds together if you are crazy enough to trace it. So in this video, I'll be explaining the entire Call of Duty Black Ops timeline. Before Black Ops became the twisted psychological thriller we know, there was World at War. The year was 2008 and Triac had just taken players back to the brutal battlefields of World War II, to the blood-soaked ruins of Stalingrad and the crumbling Reichstag. Among those ruins, one man stood out, Viktor Reznov, a Soviet sergeant brought to life by Gary Oldman's thunderous voice. Reznov was vengeance incarnate, a soldier obsessed with retribution, driven by hatred and molded by suffering. He wasn't just a character, he was an idea, the kind of ghost that lingers in the psyche long after the war ends. And while World at War didn't carry the Black Ops name, it planted the seeds. Reznov's story, his madness, his loyalty, his blood-soaked sense of justice would echo through every Black Ops game to come. 5 years later, Triac returned, and this time they went deeper. Call of Duty Black Ops wasn't about history anymore, it was about the mind. Told through the fragmented memories of CIA operative Alex Mason, Black Ops dropped players into the paranoia of the Cold War. It was like Forrest Gump rewritten by a war criminal. Mason stumbling through every flashpoint of the 20th century, Cuba, Vietnam, and the Soviet space program. And through it all, a voice echoed. The numbers, Mason. It was haunted by a Soviet scientist named Dragovich, a man obsessed with releasing Nova 6, a chemical weapon stolen from the Nazis. But as Mason chased Dragovich across the globe, the truth started to crack through the surface. His memories weren't real and his reality wasn't his own. Locked in the Gulag years earlier, Mason had been brainwashed and reprogrammed to assassinate targets without knowing why. And somewhere in that psychological prison, Reznov reappeared, or at least Mason thought he did. Because Reznov, the man who once turned Berlin, had died long ago. Every time Mason saw him, every time he heard his voice, he was seeing a ghost. Gary Oldman once said, "It is not confusing, it is just complex." And he was right. Black Ops wasn't a war story anymore. It was a descent into the fractured psyche of a soldier who didn't even know who he was anymore. And by the time the credits rolled, Mason had drowned Dragovich, but the damage had already been done. He had already killed the president. 2 decades later, both in reality and in fiction, Black Ops Cold War picked up the pieces. It was 1981, Reagan was in the White House, the world was held together by fear and nuclear codes, and CIA handler Russell Adler assembled a covert strike team to hunt down a mysterious Soviet spy master named Persis, a ghost who had haunted American intelligence for decades. The mission was simple, stop him before he triggered Operation Greenlight, a terrifying plan involving neutron bombs hidden beneath major European cities, waiting for the day the Soviets invaded. But there was a twist, because this was Black Ops and there was always a twist. The players stepped into the role of Bell, an agent under Adler's supervision. But Bell wasn't who they thought they were. They'd been captured by Persis, reprogrammed, brainwashed, and repurposed as a double agent for the CIA. It was Mason and Woods who grounded the story. 2 veterans now relegated to the sidelines, sitting in the back of a van in Berlin and reminiscing about wars that never truly ended. There was a strange melancholy to it, watching these icons of chaos reduced to old soldiers chasing old ghosts. And as the game reached its conclusion, Bell had to choose, betray the CIA or betray Persis. And the world's fate came down to one decision. But since Europe still stands in Black Ops 6, we know which path becomes canon. Then came Black Ops 2, a story too chaotic to exist, yet somehow real. It jumped between decades from the heat of 1980s to the neon haze of 2025, within a web of revenge, politics, and drone warfare. The game opened with Alex Mason trying to live a quiet life in Alaska, raising his son David. But peace never lasts in this universe. When Frank Woods was captured by a new villain named Raul Menendez, Mason was dragged back into the field. Menendez wasn't your typical Call of Duty antagonist. He wasn't a caricature. He was human, tragic, driven by grief over his sister's death in a CIA operation gone totally wrong. That pain turned to fury, and that fury turned to war. He manipulated everyone: Noriega, Woods, Mason, and even Hudson. He faked his death, staged kidnappings, and orchestrated a cycle of revenge that left everyone broken. And by the time the dust settled, Hudson was dead, Woods was captured, and Mason was gone. Fast forward to 2025, David Mason, who was Mason's son, had grown up into a soldier himself, fighting in a world where war was no longer fought by men but by machines. Drones ruled the skies, nations hacked each other's defenses, and Menendez returned, now a populist leader at the head of a global uprising called Cordes Die. The campaign offered 8 possible endings, 8 variations of chaos. Sometimes Mason lived, sometimes he didn't, and sometimes Menendez died, and sometimes he set the world on fire. Once he even played a live concert with Avenged Sevenfold. And by the end, the story was fractured, not just in timeline, but in tone, like a fever dream of the future, half nightmare, half prophecy. Then came the reckoning. Black Ops 6 took players to 1991, the Gulf War era, a time when the Cold War was ending but paranoia was not. Russell Adler, the man once hunting purses, was now on the run, framed as a double agent. From his wheelchair, Frank Woods received a cryptic message: Bishop takes Rook. It led him to an abandoned KGB safe house where old secrets waited to be unearthed. There a new team formed, soldiers without nations chasing ghosts across borders. From the war-torn places of Iraq and the frozen remnants of Vorkuta, the same gulag that once held Mason and Reznov, the story came full circle. They discovered Credo, a hallucinogenic bioweapon engineered in secret by the CIA, intended for a false flag attack on the Capitol itself. And Pantheon, a shadowy American paramilitary group, planned to use it to overthrow their own government. It was madness, but in Black Ops, madness was the only constant. And so it ended as these stories often do, with a helicopter, a final confrontation, and a strangled breath beneath a dying sky. Now we stand in 2035, 10 years after the events of Black Ops 2. The torch passes once again to David Mason, the son who inherited his father's legacy and his trauma. This time he is played by Milo Ventimiglia, a perfect casting choice, almost uncanny in how much he resembles Alex Mason himself. He is joined by Michael Rooker reprising his old role from Black Ops 2. The story takes place in a fractured future, one where fear itself has become a weapon. Mason's team faces a manipulative enemy who doesn't need to drop bombs to start wars, only ideas. And somewhere in that storm, Raul Menendez still lingers, the same voice whispering chaos throughout the decades. It really is poetic. After all the brainwashing, betrayal, and bloodshed, the cycle begins again. Fathers and sons, ghosts and soldiers, all trapped in the same endless shadow war. The numbers, the conspiracies, the hallucinations, they all lead here to 2035, to a world where reality itself is just another battlefield. The Black Ops saga isn't just a story about war, it is about memory, about the cost of loyalty, the fragility of identity, and how one man's revenge can echo across generations. From the trenches of Berlin to the drone-filled skies of the future, it is a story that refuses to make sense, and that's exactly why it endures. Because in the world of Black Ops, truth isn't what matters, only the people who believe it. Please, if you enjoyed this video, kindly hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell icon so you can get notified when I upload new videos like this, as I am desperately trying to hit 1K subscribers by the end of this year. And until next time, peace and love.
Incredible.